Have fun all day, Dad.
Hello and happy Father's Day. Welcome back to another fine edition of the Laughing Horror Podcast. I am, as always, your host, Kyle Laugh. And today on our show, we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Rec 4 to finally close out that series. And then we're going to start up with Sleepaway Camp because, of course, I need to jump in right into a new series the moment the old one's been completed. And finally, in our ongoing Universal Monster movie films, where we typically make an exception to our spoiler rule due to the age of the film, we review and break down the murders in the Rue Morgue. So all this and our regular weekly segments of news, next week's horror releases, and of course my random bantering about whatever's on my mind at the time I'm recording. So just a fair warning, it is hot as hell in here, and just so there's no confusion, I am currently watching the WWE Money in the Bank pay-per-view while I'm recording this. So if I say anything odd or random, just know it's likely caused because of the wrestling show. So, by the way, did you guys listen to the last episode of the show? Because if you have not, I definitely urge you to check it out. Click play, skip a few minutes into it, and you'll get to an interview I did with Andy Palmer, who directed a handful of films in the horror genre, including the Funhouse Massacre, which is, if you like horror comedy, is awesome, and I would suggest it for you to check that out. And a film that we're actually going to be reviewing on the next week's show entitled Badlands of Cain, which I'm actually really excited to check out. The way he was talking about it sounds amazing. So on top of all of that cool stuff, the man is hilarious. He's down to earth, and he's got this great story about how and when he decided to become a director. So it's all great stuff. So go ahead and check that out if you'd like. Also, I started to do a bit of collecting today by fluke. My wife decided she wanted to go thrift shopping and yard sale hunting just for fun today. So walked in one of the stores and found that they were selling some VHS tapes. Excuse me. So I took a quick peek and I ended up seeing the Blair Witch Project and Bram Stoker's Dracula. So figured I'd grab them, knowing people that have actually started collecting old VHS horror tapes on their own. I may as well join the fun and see if I can help them out when it comes to some good finds here and there. But what I would really like to find for myself, though, would be an original Nightmare on Elm Street VHS. Probably impossible to find, I know, but you can always dream. The closest thing I've had in that sense would be one of the original films poster, well, a reprint, of course. It hung proudly in my room for ages, and I'm sure I've had that thing 15 years, maybe a little bit more. Basically, it moved with me from place to place until I stored it at a friend's place for a few weeks, or actually a few days, when I was moving to a different location, and his crazy ex-girlfriend decided to toss not only that poster out, but about 20 others with it. So, moral of the story, keep your favorite stuff close to you, and don't trust friends who have crazy, girlfriends or boyfriends, depending on which scenario you're looking at. So now, before we jump into the show, contacting us anytime is greatly appreciated. So you can do that through our emails, laughingHorrorPodcast@gmail.com, or DM us on Twitter @laughing_horror. So whether or not you're following me or I'm following you, I've now got it set up where you can message us through here. So don't hesitate to send us your comments, reviews, or voice clips. So, we can put it all on air for you. So without further hesitation, let's jump right into some news. There's not much in news this week, but here we go anyways. Fox has officially announced the premiere date for their televised spin-off of the horror masterpiece The Exorcist, which is set to make its debut September 23rd at 9 p.m. Days prior to this, Fox had also released the news that actor Alan Ruck, who is best known for his portrayal as the best friend Cameron Fry in the awesome 80s film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, who had a guest starring role in the pilot episode, has decided to take on the same role as the series regular. So definitely looking forward to that. Otherwise, there really hasn't been much else in news besides trailers and some gameplay releases, such as Rob Zombie's 31, 4-minute gameplay video for Friday the 13th, the Telltale Walking Dead Season 3 trailer, and actually this amazing video entitled A History of Horror, which was put together by a man named Diego Carrera, and it follows horror from the years 1895 to the present day. So if one or any of these things interest you, you can definitely find them readily available to you on the Twitter page. Or as always, you can definitely do a YouTube search and check them out through the names that I gave you. As for releases this week, we've got 3 things for you here on June 24th. So the first being The Neon Demon, starring Elle Fanning, Christina Hendrick, and Keanu Reeves, gets a limited theatrical release. The film Intruder, starring Justin Ament, Stephen Beckingham, and Teresa Decker, getting a limited theatrical release as well as a VOD release on the same day. And last but not least, Blake Lively stars in The Shallows, which again is out in theaters this Friday, June 24th. And that's all there is for releases this week. There hasn't been anything notable for home video to speak of that I found anyways. If I'm wrong, you know what to do. Just let me know. So now we'll go ahead and jump right into the reviews. So we will start with Rec 4. So the synopsis. Directly following the events at the hotel in Rec 2, Rec 4 once again follows Angela and a small group of survivors as they have been brought aboard a ship whose one purpose is to help not only contain, but find a cure to the virus that originally started at the apartment building. Alright, so for starters, if you have not seen Rec 3, it's perfectly fine, as the premise is heavily based on the first 2 entries in the series, and the third is mentioned, but really unnecessary to the plot in any other way than explaining how easily the virus could spread. This would have been good as a standalone film, I find, but as a sequel to both Rec and Rec 2, it wasn't very good. If you've seen the past entries into the series, you'd already know what's going on, which technically ruins the first 2/3 of this film, which is normally used to build the story, but as the story was already set, it was basically wasted on poor character development and not much else after that. With the exception of one of the kills near the end of the film, the remainder of the kills were all very generic and all resembled each other by having any character being attacked by one of the infected use the exact same strategy to defend themselves, which it got boring quite fast. It's good to have a strategy to be able to defend yourself from these things, but it does make for good television, or films for that matter. On a positive note, though, the acting was actually pretty decent. But this is really the only thing I can give props to on this film, next to the aforementioned final kill. Also, I don't know if this film is just too new or if it's just the version that I had, but the subtitles were incredibly poor, as the translations made no sense at all at most times. It honestly looked like somebody used an online translator and just put in the first thing that showed up, because the lines being shot out to me made no sense a lot of the times, and I even found it giving me what I believe were Russian subtitles at some points in time, which honestly it seems pretty odd, but whatever. So unless you haven't seen the first 2 entries, it's not really worth wasting your time on. If you've got nothing better to do and want to finish the series, then by all means go right ahead. But personally, I give Rec 4 an ironic 4, and that's only because of that kill that I mentioned. So now we'll go ahead and we'll move into Sleepaway Camp. So the synopsis. Angela and Ricky are sent to camp for the summer, where they will meet old friends, new enemies, and where love may just be around the corner. But this year, something sinister is taking place at Camp Arawak, when random campers and staff members start to experience a variety of dangerous accidents that soon start to become deadly. Alright, so although it's filled with horrendous acting, ridiculously low budget camera work, and a pedophile that is out in the open, and nobody seems to give a damn that he's a creepy dirtbag, which to me is a massive plot hole in itself. The film is actually one of the greatest gems to come out of the 80s, thanks to its clever story and the incredible, amazing, shocking ending that it provides to you, which has to be the biggest like WTF moments in horror history. Go ahead and ask any fan of the genre what film coming out of the 80s that had possibly the most shocking conclusion, and at least 90% of them will throw Sleepaway Camp out there for you. If there's anything I would love more movie-wise, is to upgrade this one and reboot this one. Just it'd be the perfect film to do it, as recreate all the same elements, or take all the same elements to make an awesome horror film with it even today. Of course, you'd fix up some of the dialogue, ensure good actors were on board, but keep the plot and the ending the same. And these days you'd have gold, especially when you're talking about a new generation of kids who have likely never seen or heard of the original. It'd be perfect for them. I actually had the pleasure of viewing the film in 2 different formats as well. So I had the remastered high definition version and the straight from original VHS straight to DVD copy, which is pretty rough to sit through after you've already seen how beautiful the background scenery is on the remastered edition. So with one of the greatest endings to ever grace the horror community, I must suggest that Sleepaway Camp to everybody, and I give it an 8 out of 10. And seriously, if someone has the rights to this gem and wants to work on a remake, I'm down for helping to write a script for this. So, excuse me, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our final film, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. So, based off the Edgar Allan Poe short story of the same name, Murders in the Rue Morgue follows a mad scientist named Dr. Miracle, who just so happens to be portrayed by screen legend Bela Lugosi, and his attempts at injecting ape blood into virgin women who he kidnaps in order to create a mate for his talking ape named Eric. Great name for an ape. I know I usually give you the entire rundown of the Universal monster films, but I was honestly and seriously bored to tears with this one. I'll assume and hope this had to do with the conditions I had surrounding me while I was viewing the film, such as having a fairly high fever. I was waking up. I woke up a few hours before I normally would. And actually my personal copy of the film ended up getting destroyed by a certain child of mine who will remain unnamed in the spirit of Father's Day. So with all that, I took to YouTube to see if a copy was available, and I ended up finding a drive-in variant. So it basically started with 10 minutes of advertising for lobby snacks, and midway through the film, same thing happened for another 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah, it wasn't really the best quality film to be watching to start with, and the actual quality of the film itself, I should say, it was just horrendous. You couldn't make out faces or anything. Like, I love Poe as much as the next guy, but what I recall and the minor notes that I did take, I did not like this film at all, and I honestly found it to be a completely ridiculous concept. And this is coming from a guy who was stupid excited to watch this film, but this does happen from time to time. I'll take The Purge for example. Look how exciting the trailer was and how great of a concept that had, and they completely ruined it. That film was ruined from top to bottom. But yeah, honestly, okay, well, I digress. I don't want to be getting into that one today, because if I do, I will not stop complaining about it. Anyways, so yeah, that about does it for our show today. So once again, our email is laughinghorrorpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is @laughing_horror. So don't hesitate to send us your feedback, comments, concerns, personal reviews, and ratings. And like I said earlier, I would love to air your voice clip messages on the air, so feel free to send them in to us. So as for next week, we'll be covering all the same old stuff. And for our films, we will be reviewing Sleepaway Camp 2, of course. Badlands of Cain, as mentioned earlier. And for our third film, I've actually decided to take a break from the whole Universal monster movie reviews. They're kind of giving me a headache. And they're kind of getting a little bit boring as well. So in its place, I'll be adding a review of a random film, which will, I'll end up letting you know about it midweek as to what it is in case you want to review it yourselves or anything of that nature. So with that being all said and done, I thank you for downloading the Laughing Horror Podcast. If you have yet to do it, subscribe to us on iTunes, follow us on Podbean, or add us to your favorite podcast app to spread the love. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you next week.